Hi, hello. Today we are going to focus on 6 Pokemon that you can use your Stellar Terra shards on for general 5 and 6-star raids to give you more options and flexibility. If you're new here, I make builds to highlight certain Pokemon that are cool, but also to give you more options when you are selecting what to use by going into a raid battle. These builds will all have Stellar as their Terra type and also just moves, held items, EVs, but you can change all of those to fit your specific playstyle. If you don't know what Stellar is, I did a 6-minute video on how it worked using Arceus. In that video, I said if you don't have Arceus, you're not missing out on much, but if you do have Arceus and you use Arceus a lot for raids, then Stellar would remove the constant needing of changing your Terra to match your plates, which ultimately saves time. Other than that, if you made it this far in the game without using Arceus or you don't have one, like I said in the video, you're not missing out on much. Stellar works differently in raid battles than it does outside of raid battles, so for the sake of this video, we'll only be focused on what it does in raids. Ultimately, when you pick Stellar as your Terra type, you'll keep your same weakness. For example, if you're electric and your Terra is electric, you're going to be weak to ground. So if you're electric and your Terra is Stellar, you're still weak to ground. On the flip side, your electric moves will do double damage when you're Terra electric. This is going to be the same for Stellar Terra because electric moves match your original typing of being electric. If you use a move that doesn't match your original typing with Stellar, then you will get a 20% damage boost. So for example, Bellibolt using Acid Spray would get a 20% boost when it terastallizes to the Stellar Terra type in a raid battle. This will lead us to our first Pokemon that you should Stellar, which is Bellibolt. Now, I've done a ton of raid builds in the last year featuring Bellibolt, but I think it's easily one of the best 5/6-star raid Pokemon that you should have, and I said that a year ago, and that still holds true today. Side note, for these 6 Pokemon, none of them will be legendary or mythical because I wanted to pick Pokemon that were easy for people to get and to build right away. There are a couple moves that are just without a doubt super good in Terra raid battles, and if a Pokemon can learn a move that matches their typing, there's no reason not to have those moves. Some of those moves include Drain Punch, Giga Drain, Parabolic Charge. Oddly enough, those moves all work with a held item called Big Root, which is much better than Shell Bell if you do have those moves. I did a whole video on that as well. Because Bellibolt is only weak to ground, it has great stats, it has a good ability, which is Electromorphosis, and it has an amazing move pool. Parabolic Charge and Acid Spray are a must on Bellibolt. The other moves here could be Reflect, Chilling Water, even Electric Terrain. But not only does Bellibolt do great damage and recover a bunch of health with Parabolic Charge, but it can do even more damage and help the team with a move like Acid Spray. Now, the reason we want to do Stellar is because if you've built a Bellibolt, you'll know that it works in a lot of raid situations, so it's a great use of your 50 shards. And letting you do 20% more damage on moves like Acid Spray or Chilling Water to help the team is just free. Because like I said earlier, Stellar Terra is just your original weakness. In that case, Bellibolt is just weak to ground. So if you haven't built one of these, this should be one of your first builds of this video. I'm going to do really basic EVs for all of these builds, just so it lowers the barrier to entry when you're building. For this case, we just want to do 252 HP, 252 in special attack, and you can put the remaining 6 into defense. I could make a whole video on why HP is the most important stat, especially when it comes to building, but we'll do that a different time. I personally like the held item Terrain extender on Bellibolt because it will make Electric Terrain last 8 turns instead of 5 turns. Electric Terrain will prevent against sleep, which is really important when you are against a Pokemon that does use either Yawn or Spore or Sing, but it also powers up everyone's electric type moves by 30%. That means your Parabolic Charge will do more damage, but also you'll get more health back, but also your teammates' electric type moves will do more damage. I think that's a win-win because something like Electric Terrain cannot be cleared by a raid boss. A raid boss would have to either set their own terrain or use a move like Ice Spinner to remove it. Whereas if you use a move like Nasty Plot or Sword Stance, that can and will eventually be cleared by a raid boss. Something like this is much more harder for that boss to clear. But again, like I said earlier in the video, you can change and rearrange these moves to your fitting. I do still think Parabolic Charge and Acid Spray are a must and a given on any Bellibolt going forward. Our next Pokemon is going to be Superior. Now, the interesting thing about Superior is its ability. Its ability reverses any stat changes that happen to them. So, for example, if Superior used Swords Dance, I'm not actually sure if it gets Swords Dance, but that's not the point. If Superior uses Swords Dance, instead of getting a +2 in its attack, it would actually get a -2 in its attack. So it gets a move called Leaf Storm. You have probably seen this maybe on Lurantis, which also has Contrary. When you use Leaf Storm, it does 130 damage, but it lowers your special attack by 2. Because of Superior's ability Contrary, it actually will increase it by 2. So every time you use Leaf Storm, it's actually getting stronger and stronger, where other Pokemon, it would get weaker and weaker. And then we are going to see Terra Blast here. So Terra Blast and Stellar Terra work really uniquely. When you use Terra Blast on a Pokemon that is Stellar Terra type, it will always be super effective. If we are fighting against a water Pokemon, obviously Leaf Storm and Giga Drain will be super effective. But if we were fighting against a fairy Pokemon, Leaf Storm and Giga Drain would do neutral damage. But once we Terastallize, our Terra Blast will be super effective, no matter what type it is. Problem with that is Terra Blast will lower your attack and your special attack every time you use it. But because Superior has Contrary, it's going to do the same thing Leaf Storm does, which is actually increase your attack and your special attack every time you use it. So these Contrary Pokemon make a great use of Terra Blast, where a lot of other Pokemon with the Stellar Terra type don't make a great use of Terra Blast. I should put a side note here that the reason Terra Blast is super effective against any target is because that target is Terastallized, but in a raid battle, they're always Terastallized, so that's why it always does super effective. So specifically with Superior, we have Leaf Storm, which will do big damage and increase our special attack every time we use it. We have same type attack bonus Giga Drain, which will be our health recovery. We will have Terra Blast, which will also increase every time we use it once we are Terastallized, but also be super effective no matter what we're fighting. And then the last move I would suggest, and again, you can be very flexible on this, is Gastro Acid. There is not a whole lot of Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet that can get Gastro Acid, and Gastro Acid can be really great at just suppressing the raid boss's ability. We have seen specific raid bosses like Salamence with Moxie, or Annihilate with Defiant, and those are really annoying abilities to deal with, and sometimes those abilities that the raid boss has is what will cost you the raid. So you can put a lot of moves here. Superior gets access to Light Screen and Reflect. Superior gets access to Breaking Swipe. These are all really great moves. The reason I'm showcasing Gastro Acid is just because not a lot of Pokemon get Gastro Acid, and the Pokemon that do get Gastro Acid, like Arbok, aren't particularly good. We have a really strong Pokemon here, and I think this is another one that you should definitely build, definitely use your Terra Shards on. It has a great move pool that can be flexible to fit your playstyle. Like I said, I wanted to highlight Gastro Acid because I think it is a great move that you can use in Terra raids, but also its whole moveset is really, really good. Grass Pokemon in general, just with Giga Drain, are just... you really can't go wrong with... Like, you should have at least one Grass Pokemon. Grass Pokemon with Giga Drain for raid battles is just fantastic. It's kind of the same with fighting Pokemon and Draining Punch. Our EVs are going to, again, be very, very simple. 252 in HP, 252 in special attack. You can put the other 4 into either special defense or defense. It doesn't matter too much here. And the held item I've picked here for Superior would be Miracle Seed. That will give you a 20% increase in all your grass-type moves. Specifically, your Giga Drain will do more damage. Therefore, you will get your health back. Your very strong hitting Leaf Storm will do even more damage. But this would not affect Terra Blast from my understanding at all. You could also do something like teaching Superior Grassy Terrain. That will boost Leaf Storm by 30%. That will boost Giga Drain by 30%. If your Giga Drain is doing 30% more, you're getting more health back. But I really don't think you need something like Shell Bell or Big Root here. Even with something like one Leaf Storm that will give you a +2 the next time when you switch over to Giga Drain, you just have a significantly stronger Giga Drain on top of the Miracle Seed damage. So that should get you back to full health, and you can rotate between the two. Because at every point in a raid battle, the raid boss is going to clear your stats. You're not going to be able to spam the same move over and over. So you can very easily do Leaf Storm, Giga Drain, Leaf Storm, Giga Drain, and then just stay very, very healthy in that situation. And of course, you still have something that can help the entire team, which is Gastro Acid, or Reflect, or Light Screen, or Breaking Swipe. A lot of moves that Superior can learn here. Our next Pokemon is Malamar, which is a Dark Psychic type. Out of all 6 of these Pokemon, I think Malamar is the one you want to skip. It has the same ability as Superior or as Lurantis, which is Contrary. So it's really the same gimmick here of instead of using Leaf Storm to power up, you're going to use Super Power. And then, of course, Terra Blast will be super effective no matter what. Malamar also gets access to Reflect, gets access to Lunge, so you can also use Lunge to lower the raid boss's attack stat, which would benefit the entire team, but also use that to build your Terra. The interesting thing about Malamar is it doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. Malamar is 4 times weak to Bug and 2 times weak to Fairy and cannot be hit by Psychic attacks. The great thing here is when you Stellar Terrasilize, you have the same weaknesses and resistances that you would before. So because Malamar is Dark and Psychic, you would still only be weak to Bug, only be weak to Fairy, and you cannot be hit by Psychic moves at all. So I guess if you're really bad at remembering typing, maybe you should build Malamar. But Malamar's stats aren't particularly great, and its move pool is not as good as Superior. So, like, overall, I think Malamar is a good use of your 50 Stellar Terra Shards if you just want something very consistent. But there are just so many other Pokemon that just do so much more damage, so much faster, and don't have this clunkiness that Malamar has. Unlike Superior, Malamar does need the Shell Bell because it has no way of health recovery, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but after I was just talking about Superior, Superior has so many versatile moves, it has built-in recovery, its stats are much better, and it can just do damage a lot faster. I'm going to show a clip here on screen that you can see that here with Malamar, I am +4 attack with Superpower, and Superpower will boost both my attack and my defense every time I use it, because it's opposite. And you can see that even at a +4, I just don't do that much damage with a super effective Terra Blast. And again, that's not the end of the world. It's just that, like, Malamar is one of those Pokemon on paper with Contrary and Terra Blast that seems like, oh my gosh, this is a no-brainer. But in execution, it's not really that great. And I put a lot of time into testing all these builds because on paper, these Pokemon seem great and I'm going to fill out all the moves. But in testing, it doesn't actually turn out that well. And out of all of these raid builds, I used Malamar in the most amount of raids. And no matter what item I gave it, no matter what moves I taught it, it just always seemed unimpressive. But again, like I said, the impressive thing about Malamar is it's only weak to Fairy and it's only weak to Bug. If you are really bad at typing, maybe you should build Malamar because it doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. But if you're limited on Terra Stellar Shards, Superior is the way better Contrary user. You can apply the same logic and same build method I did with Superior to Lurantis, which is another Contrary user. I just wanted to talk about 2 Contrary users. You would think that like both Contrary users would be absolutely amazing. Again, I don't think Malamar is the worst. It's just, Our next Pokemon is going to be Primarina. Primarina has one of the best typings in the entire game, which is Water Fairy. There's a couple typings that just really, really work super well together. Water Fairy is one of them. Steel Fairy is another one. That is why Zacian is so good. And then another typing would be Fire Dark. Hello, Incineroar. There are just some typings that are great together, and Water Fairy is one of those. Neither one of Primarina's abilities are that great for raids. Liquid Voice changes all sound-based moves to water-type moves, but that doesn't really matter. There's nothing that you're going to see that really stands out in that instance. But because of its typing and because of its move pool, Primarina is just a very good, stable Pokemon that benefits from Stellar. So if you were just a pure water-type Pokemon, you would be weak to Electric and Grass, and you would resist Fire, Water, Ice, and Steel. If you were a Water Fairy Pokemon like Primarina, you do add an extra weakness. You're still weak to Electric and Grass, but you are now weak to Poison. But you can't get hit by dragons at all, and you actually get a lot more resistance. So you're resistant to Fire, Water, Ice. You're now resistant to fighting, you're resistant to bug, and yeah, you're resistant to dark. So you have all the same resistances except for steel. Steel is now neutral. So the thing about regular Terra is if you're a water type Pokemon, if you're a water fairy Pokemon, and you just go purely water, you lose a lot of resistances. And if you go purely fairy, you also lose a lot of resistances. So that's why Stellar is a perfect fit for something like Primarina. Primarina has a great special attack of 126. And it gets Chilling Water, which is a great move to support the team. Moonblast, which is a very powerful fairy-type move with a 30% chance of lowering the target's special attack. It gets Calm Mind to increase your special defense and your special attack. And then it gets Misty Terrain. Now, Misty Terrain doesn't boost the damage of fairy-type moves. You would think because Electric Terrain, Grassy Terrain, and Psychic Terrain does boost those respective attacks. Misty Terrain does not. Misty Terrain just halves the amount of damage from Dragon-type moves for 5 turns. But what Misty Terrain does is it does prevent status conditions. So just like we said with Electric Terrain preventing sleep, Misty Terrain will prevent sleep, burn, paralysis, etc., which is very helpful for the entire team. Primarina has a great move pool. You can also teach Primarina Light Screen and Reflect. The great thing about being Stellar type is if you're going into a raid that is weak to Fairy, you can keep Moonblast and keep all the other moves the same. And if you're going in a raid that is weak to Water, you can just replace Moonblast with Surf or Hydro Pump. And now you have a Water Fairy Pokemon that can be very interchangeable in raids. Now, if you've been playing since day one, there is another Water Fairy Pokemon that is very good. And the reason it's very good is because it is Water Fairy and is a very good type. So if you are an Azumarill user, you can take the same logic I've applied to Primarina, which is make it Stellar Terra type, because you want those resistances that Water Fairy brings to you. If you've made it this far, Primarina is one of the best Water Fairy type attackers on the special side, and Azumarill is a good physical Water Fairy attacker on the physical side. I just said that. But anyways, while they do have the same typing, they do serve different roles. So there you go. That's kind of like a 2-in-1 for you. And before we get to the final 2 Pokemon, if you've made it this far, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps us out. We're almost to 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it. After you finish this video, leave a comment of the 6 of these. Which one was your favorite? That would be really great. Okay, moving on to our 5th Pokemon, which is Slowking, Galarian Slowking, which is a Poison and Psychic type Pokemon with the Terra of Stellar. Slowking also has such a great move pool, and it does take advantage of the Stellar Terra type pretty well here. Slowking is going to have Acid Spray. We've already talked about that. It's going to have Sludge Wave, which is a 95 damaging poison type move. It's going to have Psychic, and then it's going to have Snarl. And because it's using 4 attacks, we can actually give it the Assault Vest, which will increase its special defense. I've seen some misconceptions about how Assault Vest works. Assault Vest only works for increasing the special defense. It says so right there in the description on the game. I know sometimes y'all don't read. It does say only special defense there. But it also prevents the use of status type moves. So you can't use something like Assault Vest and Light Screen or Assault Vest and Swords Dance. Any status type move, you just can't use with Assault Vest. So because all of these are considered attacks, we can get that special defense boost with Assault Vest. Now, of course, like I said time and time again in this video, if Assault Vest is not your playstyle, you can feel free to switch that to something like Shell Bell. There's really not much to say here with Slowking's moveset. You are very flexible with a Acid Spray increasing the damage of either Sludge Wave or Psychic, whichever is super effective for you. And because you are the Stellar Terra type, you're going to get that same type of attack bonus plus the Stellar boost because Psychic and Poison match your original typing. Galarian Slowking is weak to Ground, Ghost, and Dark with Grass, Fighting, Poison, and Fairy resistances. So it does fit in a lot of situations where these other Pokemon do not. Just, again, all of these are really basic EVs, so just 252 HP and then 252 in special attack. You can put the remaining 6 in either defense or special defense. And for ability, Curious Medicine and Regenerator don't really work in raids, so you can just do something like Own Tempo, so you're not affected by Intimidate. You can't be confused at all. Not the world's best ability, but not the worst. It's technically better than Liquid Voice in this situation from Primarina. So, and then our final Pokemon is going to be Araquanid, which is a water bug Pokemon with the Stellar Terra type. And the item we're actually going to give it is Muscle Band, which increase all physical attacks by 10%. We have 4 physical attacks here on Araquanid. We have Liquidation, a strong water type attack. We have Leech Life. Again, I mentioned earlier, it is a move that will restore your HP like Parabolic Charge, Drain Punch, Giga Drain. We have Lunge, which will lower the raid's boss physical attack. And we have Skitter Smack, which will lower the raid boss's special attack. So Araquanid is really cool here. Araquanid can help the team out with either Lunge or Skitter Smack, or if it's a mixed attacker, it can do both. Anytime it uses that, it will build Terra. It has great recovery with Leech Life, and then it has Liquidation, a strong water type move. So not only do you have 4 attacks, you could actually put Assault Vest on Araquanid, technically speaking, because these are all attacks. Not only does it have 4 strong physical attacks, but it takes advantage of its same type attack bonus, because it is water and bug. But unlike the last 2 Pokemon we've talked about, Primarina and Slowking, Araquanid has a super cool ability. Araquanid's ability is called Water Bubble, and it's the only Pokemon that gets it. Well, besides Jupiter. Water Bubble will reduce the damage taken by any Fire-type move by 50%, and it will double the power of Water-type moves used by Araquanid. You also can't get burned with Water Bubble. It's reducing Fire-type moves, it's preventing burned, which is really great for a physical attacker. And that Liquidation is going from a base 85 power to a base 170 power. So not only is Liquidation getting the double damage from the Water Bubble ability, but you are also getting double damage on top of that because of Stellar Terra type and because you're matching the same type attack bonus. So a Liquidation is going to hit super hard. On top of you have damage control with Lunge and Skitter Smack, and you have health recovery with Leech Life. So yeah, I think Araquanid is just a super cool Pokemon with a super cool ability. You could do something like Mystic Water to make Liquidation even stronger. You could do something like the Insect Plate to make your bug moves even stronger. Muscle Band for me covers all of that. You could do something like Expert Belt, which only increases it if it's a super effective move. So you could go actually that route if you want to. Or you could do something like Assault Vest. I don't really think you need Shell Bell here, but again, you could do Shell Bell. If you never know, if you never know what item to put on your Pokemon, just start with Shell Bell. Shell Bell is better than no held item. You would be surprised on how many people just don't have a single held item on their Pokemon in these raid battles, and they wonder why they struggle with so much for raids. If you have a box of Pokemon that you bring to raids and you're unsure of what item to put on, Shell Bell is where you can start. That's probably the best advice I can give you, is just go to the store, buy like 10 Shell Bells, give them to your raid Pokemon, and then you can customize them from there. And you can adjust the held item at any point, right? It's not permanent. There you go. These are 6 Pokemon that you can use that take advantage of the Stellar Terra type in raid battles. Hopefully at the end of this video, it has maybe encouraged or helped you decide that, look, I should change my Azumarill to Stellar, or I should change my Incineroar to Stellar, or I have a Belly Bolt that I use all the time and I should change that to Stellar. I think there are probably some dual type Pokemon that don't fully take advantage of Stellar. Like, I think Dreadnought is a good one, where Dreadnought is almost better losing its rock typing and being pure water. But Dreadnought is also like a very specific situational Pokemon. For a lot of single type Pokemon like Belly Bolt or Superior, there's almost no reason not to have it be Stellar, unless you don't have the shards, or unless that Pokemon only has one attack and then the other attacks are just status type moves. But again, all situational. Point of this video was just to give you some more raid builds, and I think all of these are fun. I've tested all of these, and I think they all work great. So thanks for making it to the end. Thanks for dealing with me. And I'll be back later and I'll be back with more videos in the future. So thank you. Have a great day.